So beside me on this bench, I have assembled my dream team of 4L60E parts. The best of the worst, taken from 2 blown transmissions to hopefully make one semi-good, reliable transmission to put back into my Tahoe. Let's put it together. Where we last left off, we got my Tahoe's 4L60E broken down, as well as this core 4L65E that I picked up off of Craigslist. Now, I initially was going to be using this transmission in my Trans Am project, and then I changed my mind and went with a 6L80E. So I've had this 4L65 just sitting in the garage for months now, doing nothing, and I think I finally found a use for it. So if you want to see exactly what I'm up to, just click the link at the top of the screen. That'll bring you to the previous video, and everything I'm about to do and the questionable decisions, they're going to make a lot more sense. So once all like the chunks of metal, shavings, clutch materials cleaned off of all this stuff, it almost looks like we're installing new parts. But from the 4L65E, we're going to be using its input drum, its input reverse drum. We have a new band because the band in both the 65E core donor and Tahiti's transmission was done. Tahiti's had a bunch of metal in it. The 65's was burnt. We're going to be using the 4L65's over-on clutches, forward clutch pack, its center support, output sprag, its input sprag, the 4L65 pump, the 4L65 sun shell, sun gear, and the 4L65's input reaction shaft. Also, we can't forget, we're going to be using the 4L65's torque converter, which is the whole reason we're here. The lockup clutch went in my 4L60 and completely just destroyed it, clogged the pump up, clogged the filter, fried everything. So let's hope this one's good, because remember, it did come out of a core transmission. But once again, I'm not spending any money on this rebuild because I'm kind of sick and tired of 4L60s at this point. So we're trying to do this whole thing for free. Also, I can't forget, we're using the 4L65's case because the pump for, once again, the 4L65, it's different from my 4L60. The seal is actually on the case. So, and plus my 4L60 has a bunch of metal, like just all over inside the case. I don't have any intention of cleaning out, where this one's in a lot better condition. So we are using that as well. From Tahiti's transmission, the 4L60, we're going to be using her separator plate for the valve body. We're using Tahiti's valve body because I'm pairing the 4L60 valve body with the 4L65 case because once again, the input shaft, the pump, all that stuff has to go together. But Tahiti still has the 3-2 downshift solenoid, and the electronics are different. So if I want this to be plug and play, I do need to use her valve body and separator plate. I did go ahead, disassemble this thing completely, clean all the metal out. I got all the valves moving again. So this is essentially like a rebuilt unit at this point. And once again, this is the original valve body that came out of Tahiti's transmission. Moving to the left, we have Tahiti's output shaft because the donor transmission 65 was a 2-wheel drive, Tahiti's 4-wheel drive. We have Tahiti's low roller clutch pack. These are the 20,000 mile Alto clutches I put in the previous rebuild. Everything still looks fresh. Steels look great. We have Tahiti's 3-4 clutch pack. Still looks great. Clutches, steels, no heat marks, nothing like that, no wear. And once again, the 4L65 had the blown 3-4 pack, which is why I took Tahiti's, which still looks very, very nice. And then these 2 clutch packs were from the 65E. Yeah, so everything, there's like clutches that's all mixed together, but I mean, overall, everything looks good, and I have some confidence in this build. We're also gonna be using Tahiti's input reverse drum clutch pack. Her Corvette servo that I upgraded in the last rebuild. Now, I'm not gonna be going through the extensive, fine details of the rebuild. I'm probably just gonna slap it together and bring you guys in after. If you do wanna see how I did this the first time, I got like an 1.5-hour video on my channel, more in-depth detailed on this rebuild. You can also go ahead and pick up an ATSG manual. Every time I do a transmission, if I don't have one already, I pick one of these up. Just because I have a tendency of not really paying attention when I take stuff apart. And when it comes to transmission stuff, where clutches are stacked a certain way, you got like wave plates, concave plates, washers, stuff like that, you know, a bunch of washers and stuff. These are just invaluable because you can pop them open. You can see for the valve body, it just has the entire exploded view of the valve body. So once I took it apart, you can see exactly which way each valve is supposed to go, where the springs are supposed to go, and you can get it back together. So definitely recommend picking one of these up. But yeah, if you want to see that video, it will be down in the description, and I did put it up on the screen. And yeah, before I get this thing together, let me show you the rest of the damage that I found in Tahiti and the reason why I'm using so many parts from the 65. All right, so first of all, we need to know why this clutch pack, starting with our 4L65, remember the core transmission, why the 3/4 pack failed. Because I am using that input drum from this transmission with this toasted ass 3/4 pack. So after doing some air checking on the 4L65 drum that we will be using, I found a couple of things. So for one, there's this little seal in here that the output shaft sits in. So once this assembly goes in here, the end of that sits in that seal. And on the 65, if I pull it out real quick, let's go on over to our output shaft, how this is going to sit in here. You'll see it's very sloppy loose on there. So no doubt this was bleeding pressure right out through the center of the shaft here. So that is a huge no-no. But if we go over to Tahiti's drum, where I rebuilt 20,000 miles ago that had the torque converter failure. This seal was replaced when I did that rebuild. You'll see with hers. It is a nice tight fit. So that's one reason for the failure. Let me just pop this into our 65 drum, because that is the one we're going to be using. Let me throw this away before I confuse myself. Now, the other thing I noticed when I went to air check this, so these little holes here on the input drum, you could put air pressure through them, because that's where the fluid's going to flow in and engage the packs. So by air checking this, you can engage these packs in here, these pistons, and that'll tell you if air leaks out. Obviously the seals are bad, it was leaking pressure off. And I did go ahead and air check this, and I did find one hell of a problem. So right now I'm gonna try to put air to the 3/4 pack. That's these tangs that's out here. So you see that engages. There's a little bleed off, but I believe there's a check ball in there. So you'll see the pack engages, and it pretty much holds until I release the pressure. However, if we go to the forward clutch piston, that's this middle one, completely blown out. So that's not holding pressure, and that's for the forward clutch pack, but the fluid passes through there to get to the 3/4. So if this is bleeding off that much pressure, the 3/4 is not gonna hold. So between the little brown seal and that, I think that's the main failure of this drum. I already went and I applied some pressure around the shaft here, because it's a common problem where these can essentially crack and they'll bleed through here. I didn't see anything there. And then just to give you guys a comparison real quick, if I bring over Tahiti's drum, remember this has 20,000 miles on it. It has the newer molded pistons that I did fresh rebuild on. So the same pack, this is the 3/4. And then here is that same forward clutch pack. And you can see that holds pressure until I release it. So I know the failure of our donor transmission. I'm gonna take these pistons out of Tahiti's drum, clean them up, put them in that input drum, recheck everything air-wise. And that tells me exactly what went wrong in our donor transmission, so I can ensure we don't have that issue again in our Frankenstein rebuild. Now, as for Tahiti's transmission, well, first of all, here are all the parts I bought. I got a transfer case, gasket, servo seals because I had to cut them to get the servo piston out, and I got a case to pump seal. Between this stuff and the band, the filter and the pan gasket, I think I got like $100 in this, and assuming I make that back and add revenue, yeah, this should be a free rebuild, which is why I'm even going through the trouble of putting a 65 back into the Tahoe. But right here, after digging further into Tahiti, this is the sun shell, the beast in particular, that I put in the last rebuild. The sun gear is now one part with the beast. It is completely just melted in there. And if you look at the reaction shaft, which is why I'm using the reaction shaft from the 65, that's remnants of what I believe used to be a bearing. And all the bushings are completely screwed. I also found the input sprag on Tahiti. Totally screwed. Absolutely just annihilated. Which is why I'm using it from the donor transmission. And the donor transmission has a little bit of wear too. But I mean, not nearly as bad as Tahiti's. So this is the one I'm using. And then finally, here's the clutch pack. This is the forward clutch pack from Tahiti that's completely roasted. And the overrun clutches from Tahiti that's completely roasted. Now I believe what happened, and the main point of this failure, in Tahiti was that the torque converter failed, the clutch failed, it clogged the filter up, and then at the point where it stopped working, because you guys mentioned this too in my first video, that the filter probably just got clogged, that's why it would work for a few minutes and then it would stop working. And then when you turn it off, the filter would, you know, the remnants would drop out of the filter and then it would work again. So when this happened, I was pretty much just revving the snot out of the Tahoe to get it out of the road. And then the filter was clogged up with clutch material. None of this stuff was getting the correct pressure. Everything was getting overheated, and it just roasted all this stuff from me revving it. And I think the reason why I didn't see a change in temperature is simply for the fact that the filter was clogged up. That fluid wasn't getting back into the pan or leaving the pan. So the temperature sensor is in the valve body, in the pan. So if the fluid's not leaving the pan because the filter's clogged, this stuff can get as hot as it wants, but that sensor isn't actually going to, you know, register the heat. And here it is, all magically put back together and ready to go back into Tahiti. I did splurge and buy a couple of extra things, one not by choice. For some reason on the 4L65s, they changed the size of the cooler fittings, the threads. So the 4L60s, the threads diameter is smaller. So they just kind of whoop, hot dog down a hole weight into there, and I couldn't tighten them down. So I got the correct ones here for the 4L65s. And I also went and splurged on a new torque converter seal, just because I didn't want that to potentially be a problem and put our potentially bad torque converter in there and end up with a leak that I potentially didn't need to have. So as sketchy as this build is, I'm still trying to do some things right. So I did go ahead and hook up my little transfer pump up to the cooler lines, and I have that sitting in a bottle of fresh transmission fluid. I'm just going to pump fresh fluid through the line into the cooler and out through the bottom one just till it comes out kind of clean, and then I'll be ready to yeet that thing up into here and hopefully have this thing running in a few hours. Like that, I guess. Let's take it slow. I can't believe how dirty this is. Like, how much fluid is in that thing? Oh, it's coming out way cleaner from that end. Alright guys, well it's a few days later, but the time has finally come to hook the battery back up and give this thing its first crank. Now all the fluids are filled up, transfer case, transmission. I went ahead and I popped a new starter in it because I was previously having a problem with the starter where the solenoid was kind of sticking and it was grinding intermittently. So while that was out, I popped a new one in. And the only thing I was waiting on, I had to shorten the fuel lines because the fuel lines that came in that kit were just ridiculously too long. I tried to coil them up out of the way, but they would just kink. So I ended up going online. I got some of these stainless steel single ear hose clamps. You know, these little crimp-on clamps you'll see on like CB boots and stuff. I already have the tool to crimp them, and I had to cut down the feed line and re-crimp it because just regular worm clamps weren't working. It was leaking. So those finally came in today. Got everything hooked up. Just gave the pump a prime. Absolutely no leaks. Let me bring you in here. I'll just show you exactly how I kind of ran these things. So here's our filter. That's the part that I shortened. And you can see right there the new clamp that I installed. And that nylon fuel line, it's just slipped right over that, and then there's a little lip on the end of the line. So once that's crimped, you know, you don't gotta worry about it coming off. But the problem with the worm clamps are they don't create a nice circular seal when you tighten them, and even the fuel injection clamps weren't working for me, so I had to go and get the original, you know, clamps that they had on here. I went, I put the little labels on there, caution fuel, and I secured them to the factory bracket here, where I tied up the flex fuel wiring, and I just zip tied them all together, and I secured them to that bracket that's on top of the transmission, right kind of back there. So they are secured in the factory location. The slack for the evap and the return, I ran it up over and just kind of outside the edge of the frame rail here. So that's out of the way, and I didn't have to cut those down. But for fluid, I put, I think, like 8 quarts in the transmission. I don't know what's left in that mystery torque converter. So we're gonna start there. I'll let it idle, see where the fluid drops to, and then I'll just top it off. But yeah, let's get the batteries hooked up and see if this thing is going to move. Can't wait. I really hope this works. My biggest, like, I'm not worried. I mean, I don't want to get cocky, but I'm not worried about the transmission as far as like the parts I use, because everything I air checked when it went back together, and I didn't go into detail on that. But if you guys are curious, I'm gonna put a link to my previous video when I rebuilt it the first time. I did everything exactly the same as far as air checking and all that. So I'm not really concerned about that. My main concern is that friggin' torque converter, because I don't know why they pulled it out of the original transmission. Did the transmission fail because of the torque converter? Was it just that 3/4 pack that failed, and the torque converter is still, you know, all right? I don't know. But yeah, pretty much everything I did is relying on that. And just another thing to add to the uneasiness of the test drive, there's a spider that's somewhere inside the Tahoe, because I went in there the other day when I was putting the transmission together, and I've been leaving the tools on the floor by the driver's footwell, and there was this big fat furry fast spider that just ran under the chair, under the driver's seat. And I don't know where it is right now, and there's a bunch of crap in here because when I went to the track, I still have blankets, like moving blankets and coolers and shit in the back. So yeah, there's that. And it's not like I'm particularly afraid of spiders. The thing I don't like is the element of surprise. So say I'm driving down the street with this thing, and then a spider just falls on my head or just crawling across the dashboard. That's the kind of stuff I don't like. So the fact that I don't know where the hell it is right now is not helping the situation. All right, here we go, first start. I don't even know if the battery's gonna have enough juice. Well, the idle's definitely a little wonky from being unplugged for so long. A little bit of piston slap going on. Idle is definitely wonky. Just kind of let it figure its thing out. I mean, that's got to be enough, at least for a test drive, not to mess anything up. I don't see it anywhere. All right, well. Here goes nothing. Oh, I don't like this. Where the hell is it? Son of a bitch. I'm never going to be able to drive this thing. I'm going to have to set a bug bomb off in it. Ooh, that starter sounds great. The idle finally figured itself out. Oddly, I don't have enough. There's no code for the flex fuel sensor yet. So let's start off easy. Let's see if she backs up, even goes into gear. We have reverse. We have drive. All right, we're off to a good start. We got second gear, a very mushy second gear. It definitely doesn't shift as firmly as it did before. But there might, I don't know if the check bolts have something to do with that, because I put a lot of goo in there to keep them in place. Just like listening, nothing strange. Have air conditioning in this thing? Jesus, it's hot. It feels all right. I think it might just be. It doesn't feel as crisp as it did before. I mean, it could also be that things been unplugged for like months now. It's probably got to relearn the shifts. I'm gonna head towards, I guess, the freeway. Actually, no, I'm gonna do a few more laps. I'm gonna head back, check the fluid once it's warmed up, and then I'm going to set my sights on the highway so we could kind of merge and see if we have overdrive and all that good stuff, because the converter's working fine now. So did my old one that was like destroyed, but there could still potentially be an issue with the lockup, which, you know, hopefully there isn't because everything's going smoothly. But yeah, I'll check back with you guys in a bit. All right, I just added the rest of the fluid that I had in there. It was right at the bottom of cold, so it definitely has more than enough to safely operate. The shifts have improved greatly on the 1 to 2. It's much quicker, it's not as mushy. So let's go ahead, take this thing towards the highway and we'll see how it does. So the highway is totally screwed. It's like rush hour the Friday before July 4th weekend. So I will not be getting on it in this video. However, it has been approximately 2 weeks since I last left off after I checked the fluid there. So I've been driving this thing around. The check engine light did come on, and I'm assuming it's a code for the flex fuel sensor being unplugged. I haven't yet gone in there with HP tuners and like flashed it out, but I do have my scan tool here, so we are going to hook that up and just verify there are no transmission codes. But yeah, I sat on this video for like 2 weeks because I wanted to really kind of put it through its paces, put a few miles on it before I close this out. Now, driving on the highway, everything feels absolutely normal. Torque converter lockup is working perfectly. Temperature has been great, stays just below a quarter of the way up on the gauge, which is pretty much where it always would stay. For mileage, right now I'm at 247, 105. I think when we backed this thing out earlier in the video, it had about 246, 450 on it or so. So I put about 700 miles on it since the rebuild, and so far everything has been great. So I think I lucked out and that torque converter wasn't a dud. Yeah, reusing everything. I mean, it's been 700 miles. I really don't want to friggin' jinx myself, but reusing everything, I think I matched everything up nicely as far as using some good clutches from the old transmissions, and the old transmission good clutches from the 4L65 donor. And yeah, for now, this is how she's going to stay. In the event that this transmission was to, you know, develop another issue or go out, whether it was tomorrow or year, 6 months from now, I will not be rebuilding it again. So I'm going to tell you guys that right now. We will be doing a swap on it. But as I mentioned earlier, being I did have the parts and I could pretty much do this for relatively free, I decided to give it a shot. And so far it looks like it's paying off. All right, here we go. We're going to do a wide open 1 to 2. 2 to 3. Give it a little downshift. So I got the scanner all hooked up, just pretty much scanned all the modules. Right now, let's go into the BCM. That's the same code I had last time when the transmission blew. I don't know what that's about, but I remember I had a rear HVAC code. Yeah, that's for the rear temperature door. Powertrain. All right, so that appears to be it. All right, this is some weird other thing, no module. All right, so it looks like the only code we have is a P0178 for the flex fuel sensor. So once I get HP tuners hooked up to this, I'm going to delete the sensor, being I removed it when I did the fuel lines, and I'm gonna delete the code so the light goes away. But that's it. The torque converter code is gone, so that means our lockup is totally working. We have our solenoid for our lockup, which is working. I did reuse the lockup solenoid from Tahiti's transmission with the burnt up converter. I wasn't sure if it was going to be good or not, but I did replace it when I did the rebuild, so I knew it only had 20 grand miles on it. It just depended on whether or not it survived the heat when the torque converter went out, but it apparently did. All right, so there we go. I guess 2 wrongs in this case make a right. 2 shitty 4L60s make 1 good one, at least for 700 miles, hopefully longer. But if you have any questions about anything I did, definitely leave a comment, a question down below. Once again, I'm going to link that video where I went more into detail when I first assembled the transmission 20,000 miles ago, and everything I did with this rebuild, I followed the exact same procedures. I just used, crappier parts. Now, you're probably not going to see this thing for a little bit. I mean, I do have some parts back there for a future video, but next thing you're probably going to see is the Trans Am. I'm halfway through a video on that. I'm just waiting for some parts to come in, and possibly, I don't want to say anything yet. I promise these videos, and then something happens, and I got to switch them around, and then the Trans Am doesn't come next, and then the Tahoe ends up coming next, or just follow the channel. I'm going to say this now. I never actually mentioned this, but go ahead and click that little bell that's under the video. Apparently, if you click that, it's going to notify you when I upload, because it seems like a lot of people would comment that they haven't been seeing the uploads. They're not being pushed to their feed, even if they're subscribed. So I don't know how much of a difference that bell is going to make, because I press the bell on a lot of people I'm subscribed to, and meanwhile, they're uploading, and I still don't seem to be getting notifications that they have uploaded until I go back to the channel and check myself. So I have no idea what's going on with YouTube. But for now, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you're as excited as me to have Tahiti back up and running with nothing more than a flex fuel code. That's it right now. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. See you guys in a few days.